Anyone familiar with the Federal Emergency Bunker Mission in Division 2 should know what's coming. The question I have for you is, how is this going to end? Now, I'm going to let you think about this for a few seconds. However, there is some additional information I do want you to consider. What if I told you I was rocking 74.5% explosive resistance? Would you change your opinion? Would you care to guess how much armor I'm actually going to have left? Alright, final answers please. Let's see what happens. Now if you said I was going to lose all my armor and then get ended by burn damage, you are the winner. Everyone else who is now wondering what the hell just happened, join me on a dive into the dumbest damage mechanics in the division. Now I fully understand at this point in the game, something as low priority as explosive damage might not matter to many or most of you. The problem is that I don't know the true extent of the issues that I'm seeing or what the future of the game might be. I also don't know if these issues could be carried over into like future games or ruin upcoming content. Perhaps the most important thing to remember is that in an RPG with as many stats as the Division has, consistency really matters. I mean, imagine if headshot damage only applied to red enemies, or crit only applied to purple enemies. Then consider PvE modifiers bleeding into PvP, or PvP modifiers leaking into PvE, because this might actually be happening. This video was originally intended to be a follow-up to my Summit Hunter tank build video from around 2 months ago. In fact, the build is basically a sister design to that build that I built at the same time. However, as I started to turn my attention away from Summit and towards legendary or heroic content, I started noticing issues, and because of this, I spent way too much time testing what should have been a simple stat. Before I quickly go over my build, I just wanted to say hopefully some of you guys who have experience with testing things in the Division like me can actually add some of your own findings in the comments down below. Maybe you know of other examples that I just don't mention here. Alright, now going over the build real quick. The weapons I normally use are just an AK and an M1A with the Liberty pistol. However, I also do like using the Scorpio, in which case I would use a card pistol, and if you wanted to actually use that as kind of like your main set of weapons, since you get the extra skill tier from that card pistol, I would probably just end up rolling 4 blues and only 2 yellows instead of 3 and 3, but that's up to you. For armor, it's pretty simple. The main roll I want on everything is explosive resistance. This is on all 6 items. It is also on the 2-piece bonus from Richter and Kaiser. The next roll I wanted was Armor Regen, which is on everything except the Chill Out mask, because obviously you only get 1 roll on that with the 2 mods. Also, I'm using Bellstone for 1% regen, and that Gilla from the Chill Out is 5% armor. Then of course I'm rounding it out with 2 improvised pieces, and this is just for the extra mod slots. And of course all of my mods are protection from elites. Now as far as my talents go, on my backpack I'm using Vigilance, and that's really just for a little bit more damage for solo play, but if you're actually a dedicated team player, you're probably going to want something more defensive or support oriented. On my chest piece I'm using Kinetic Momentum, and that's pretty simple, it just increases the healing that I actually get from my hive to the shield. Now overall the build is actually sitting a little under 1.3 million armor, with a bit over 30k armor regen. My protection from elites is at 72%, and it could actually be at 78 if I ever manage to actually find those 13% mods. My explosive resistance is at 74.5%, and if I did manage to get everything max rolled, I could get that up to 80%. Alright, now that you understand that pretty much my full investment with this build is for tanking legendary content, I want to explain why I find the game to be almost broken in regards to this kind of build. Alright, so first we need to look at protection from elites. Many of you know by now that this allows you to seriously reduce the damage that you take from yellow or named enemies. It is even used to reduce the damage your shield takes from these enemies. Now building on the protection from elites, we can look at disrupt resistance and hazard protection, which anyone who has tried using a shield build on the hunters knows is pretty valuable. This is because, much like your protection from elites, it actually extends to your shield too. So unlike other deployed skills, if you actually have max resistance, your shield will not be affected. This builds on a pattern of protective stats being applied to the shield, because as the game is concerned, if it is deployed, it is a part of you. We can see this in a few ways actually. If your shield is hit by bleed, you bleed. not the shield, right? If you are hit by an explosive, it will damage you or the shield, but not both, because that would actually kind of indicate double damage to one target. So the expectation becomes, if you equip explosive resistance to your character, then your shield would also get explosive resistance. And that's kind of like protection from elites. You get protection from elites, so does your shield. You have full immunity to disrupt, so does your shield. However, this is not the case for explosive resistance. Your shield actually gains nothing from it. Now, as I stated, shields gain nothing from explosive resistance, but protection from elites still works, right? Well, unfortunately, not when it comes to elite explosions. And to be honest, I'm pretty sure some elite enemy skills ignore protection from elites too. Now, for my testing, most explosions deal explosive damage. In fact, pretty much all of the red and purple enemies who use explosives deal explosive damage. However, if you are dealing with yellow bar elites, things get a bit more complicated. Honestly, I have not been able to test every single thing that explodes accurately. It's just an incredibly difficult thing, and it's a huge time vampire. But what I have tested points to 4 different issues. First, elite explosions like the Black Tusk Grenadier are both elite and explosive, meaning both protection from elites and explosive resistance can combine to reduce that damage a whole lot. However, against shields, both explosive resistance and protection from elites are completely ignored. Second, the Outcast Elite Rusher is actually not considered explosive damage. While the red and purple rushers are explosive, the yellow bar is only considered elite damage, which is why I died at the start of this video. However, that explosion is again not considered elite for the shield, which takes full damage regardless of your current amount of explosive resistance or protection from elites. Now, the third issue is actually something I'm just calling mystery damage, and that's because it could have 2 or more different causes. On the player, I've noticed a couple times when an explosion ignores my damage mitigation completely and deals full or increased damage. And this could be caused by a bug / connection issue, or maybe it could be related to exotic or environmental type damage modifiers triggering and then kind of like combining damage from other sources. So like, let's say for example, if I was near a red barrel or something that explodes that isn't actually the explosion that I'm paying attention to, while I should be able to mitigate that damage and it shouldn't be incredibly damaging to me, the incoming explosion from the enemy might combine with that explosion, and instead of getting 2 different amounts of damage, I get one that kind of combines the worst features of all of them. So I get a higher damage explosion that I can't mitigate from just regular explosion resistance. That's kind of like the best way I can say it. Something unintended that just combines together. Now, the only real issue with this is I've seen it happen, but not enough to actually get a real good identifying, source of it. And I can't really identify the true reasons, especially if it's something that's, maybe more server side, because I just don't see it on my end. Now, the fourth issue is possibly the most worrying. And this one actually kind of came to me almost at the end of testing when I was trying to work out some of the damage numbers themselves. What I noticed from doing self-grenade tests in the range was the huge damage spike on the shield versus the amount of self-damage that I took. This bonus is also seen on elite grenadiers, who have a damage of roughly 1 million, but do around 5 million to the shield. As there is only really a rough estimate as to how much damage is actually being done, because a lot of it's kind of done based on measuring or guesstimation, approximation from the different bars that you can actually see related to the health of the shield and your armor. All I can really say is this. It looks an awful lot like the 5x PvP modifier could actually be impacting some of the explosions in PvE. And it's either that or the devs have added their own explosion modifier without actually noting it on the skill or informing us, as far as the player base goes. Now, it's entirely possible that there is something way back when in the patch notes, even though I looked, that indicated something like this, but I didn't see anything. So if you guys know about that, again, post that in the comments below. But the other thing to note with this is that this damage increase is not actually seen from other self-damaging player explosives, like the skills, for example, the mortar or the sticky bomb. which, again, if it applies to our grenades and some of the enemy grenades, but not to other sources of explosives, it really does make me question where is this coming from and why, because it just makes it seem like there is yet another different layer of explosives in the game. And this could also be why some grenades, like those from the Black Tusk mini tank, just shatter shields. I mean, I think they do close to like 10 or more million damage to the shield. Yet, the grenade firing Warhound doesn't do nearly as much. In fact, some of the enemy grenades might actually be copied from the same code that players use, while other, more different sources of explosions have their own kind of like unique codes. So because of this maybe sharing of code, we might get a result where PvE enemies are actually triggering PvP modifiers on players or our skills. However, to be honest, this is just a guess based on what I've seen. There's really not much I can actually do to test this stuff, because at the end of the day, all this is just speculation based on testing and incomplete information. Now, I know what I've seen, but it's really hard to confirm this stuff without actually having all of the, server end code and all this stuff that's going on. What I know for sure is that many explosions are dealing explosive damage. But elites get incredibly more confusing, with some being only elite damage or only explosive damage, or others being both elite and explosive damage. Then when you use a shield, as most tank builds would on legendary, and no damage mitigation actually occurs, being honest, it almost kind of makes it seem like being a tank, at least a true tank, is pretty pointless. And this means that basically investing into shield skill health and just being able to take more damage on the shield seems pretty much to be the best option, which is honestly sad. I mean, why even have a stat in the game if it is not considered top tier for the one thing it is designed to actually do? But anyway, guys, if you've done some of your own testing, maybe you've seen some of these same issues, maybe you've seen completely different issues, please, let me know in the comment section below, because I would really like to actually get this figured out. Maybe if we do enough, we can get something fixed or find out the actual truth behind all of it from the devs themselves, who know they're actually, back to talking to us, so maybe we can get some information. But with that being said, I hope you found something useful in this video, and I will see you in the next one.